Good evening and welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Joshua Solomon, and with me as always is the Honorable J.P. Marzullo.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
So far so good, but it's early.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're back, by the way. I said that last week because because I wasn't so glad the first
for
thing.
a few weeks.
Mostly.
For a few weeks. I've been kind of out of it. As always, we're sponsored by Wilson Hill Pistol Club, 1732 Lakeshore Road. Open membership, no waiting list. Membership meeting is from 7. It starts at 7 o'clock, first Wednesday of the month, except for summertime. So I don't believe we're having it next week. We take the summers off. I think we're looking at September for that membership meeting. But you can always go to the website, wilsonhillpistol.org. If you're watching online, that website is in the bottom of your screen, and you can contact us through the website, wilsonhillpistol.org. The oldest sports shooting club in the state. Lots of training, lots of fun.
Nice.
All right, who do we have tonight?
Well, tonight we have two veterans here, two friends of mine, both from the Army. That's why I wore my Navy shirt tonight, because, you know, that's going to get. First person is Dylan Gray, who I've known for a while, and Dylan will talk a little bit about his post, which is in Troy. And then Don Mann, who is local in my town as well, and it'll be kind of fun. So. Go ahead, I'm done.
Yeah. So, Dylan, Don, you guys are the commanders of your American Legion posts.
That's correct. Yep.
So tell us about the American Legion. What is it, and who is it?
Go ahead, Don.
So the American Legion's federal charter was signed in 1919. It was actually stood up before that as a way for the United States to help recruit people that were eligible to serve for the upcoming wars. After the war broke out, they had a meeting in France, hashed a bunch of stuff out, and they ended up just getting the charter signed in 1919, thinking that having camaraderie after the war when people returned would be a great thing.
So the American Legion was formed to recruit people who weren't currently in the service or previously in the service, but in order to prep for the next war.
Correct. Yep. And that was in 1917.
And that's not what the American Legion is now, right?
No, not at all. No,
So
but that's how it was.
Yeah.
So once the war happened, and when they were coming back, I forget all the people that were involved in it, but it was a bunch of generals and stuff. They had a meeting in France, and that's where they decided that, hey, if we can provide a place for veterans to go when they get back, that'd be great. And the Legion was kind of already set up like that. So after that meeting, they came back to the States, got a hold of the federal government, and that's when the federal government was like, yeah, that's great, we'll sign your federal charter. And they became a nonprofit, 501c19, and it was a place for veterans to group together to help other veterans in their community.
Okay.
So how does that differ from the VFW?
Yep.
So the VFW, you have to have served. I'm not a VFW member, so it could be a little bit different, but from my understanding, to be a full VFW member, you have to be a veteran that served in a foreign war. Where the Legion, you do not have to have served in a foreign war.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
That's true.
Yep.
So it's all
That's correct.
veterans.
Yep. Any veteran, as long as you have an honorable discharge.
One day of active duty service is all you have to have served to become a member of the Legion.
Wow.
So, and he is correct with the VFW. You have to have served in a foreign war to be a VFW member. So, and the Legion is actually instrumental in it. The GI Bill was because of the American Legion.
Yeah.
The GI Bill was created by the American Legion.
Oh,
It's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, the VFW, or the Legion rather, has a group of people that are down in Washington, and their sole purpose is to lobby for veterans benefits. One of those being the GI Bill.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We have one in the state, by the way.
Yep.
We have a lobbyist for the military.
Okay. So you're a veteran, and you're a member of the or the American Legion, and you lobby for veterans rights, veterans
Health care,
things like that. Is there a social aspect to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more complex than that. So The lobbying portions are more, that's a lot higher up the food chain than a local post. I mean, local posts can, like our post, we just passed a resolution. So next step is it goes to district. After district, it would go to state. After state, it would go to national. If it passes all those, then it becomes something that the Legion will do. And well, our resolution is to make it so that family courts in America cannot use PTSD as the sole purpose to reduce parenting time with veterans' children. So if that passes up through, then the Legion would start working on how can we get judges and laws built to protect those veterans with, again, the way it's written is sole PTSD. Because if there's other issues, it needs to be looked at in a more dynamic way.
I would assume that's a big issue. We've talked about PTSD on this show before with other veterans, including General Boldock.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard about this business of PTSD being a reason why someone would not be able to see their child.
Oh, it's very real.
So
it's very real.
So tell me about that a little bit. I mean, I guess, does PTSD have to be a certain level, a certain debilitative factor, to play into that? Or is it something, has it become something that the opposing spouse simply uses as a tool in court? Like that.
Unfortunately, what
seems very
what we've been
unfair.
seeing is that it has been used or weaponized, actually. So, you can have plenty of veterans that have PTSD that aren't getting treatment. So they're not diagnosed, they're not being treated. Well, then that person nobody would have anything they could bring to court. So when the veteran's like, yeah, I'm having problems, they go to the VA and start getting treatment, and then a divorce happens, unfortunately. Now that spouse is able, or ex-spouse, soon to be ex, however you want to word it, would be able to be like, well, this veteran's unstable, they're in treatment for PTSD, I don't feel safe with my child being with them.
Wow.
That's why our resolution was written where it says sole in it, because if there's other factors, it needs to be handled differently.
Well, obviously, if there's an element of self-destructiveness or outwardly destructiveness, that would certainly play into it.
Yeah, that all plays a factor in
But
it is,
there's plenty of people who are treated for PTSD who don't have any violent nature to them,
Yep.
right?
Me being one of them.
That's it's simply more of a well, I'm not an expert on the subject, but it's more of a debilitating thing, right? Like where you get into a situation where you just cease to function. You're not dangerous to anyone. You just kind of go in on yourself. There's an element of depression, or I mean, am I wrong?
PTSD is one of those things it's really hard to explain unless you actually suffer from it.
Right.
Me being that I suffer from PTSD, when I first retired from the Army, I spent 20 years in the Army.
Yeah, let me stop you there. Why don't you tell the viewers where you served? You just said 20 years. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I joined in 1997 in California. My dad was stationed out there when I was a kid. I grew up in California. Joined the Army at the age of 24 and never looked back. I never will have returned to California to live. It was one of those, I needed a change and I needed somewhere to I had a child on the way, and I needed to take care of my kid. I had really a mediocre job, singing in a band, not really doing anything constructive, wasn't really financially able to take care of a child. So I manned up and joined the Army. That's a way to take care of my kid. I spent 20 years in the Army. I retired in 2017. Just in the States alone, I was stationed in Texas, California, Georgia, Virginia, and Colorado. Spent 5 years in Germany. Spent a year in Korea. Multiple combat deployments. My first deployment, I went to Kosovo in Albania, actually, in 1999 during the Slobodan Milosevic.
Yep.
We'll just call it a period, for lack of a better word. I spent 4 months in Albania, deployed to Iraq at the beginning of the Iraq War in 2003, went back in 2007, deployed to Afghanistan in 2011, and deployed to Kuwait in 2013. So those were all my deployments. I saw and did things that no human being ever should in their life. Unfortunately, that's what I signed up for, and that's the risk I was, I wrote a blank check up to the amount of my life, you know, to defend this country, and I'll do it again. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But the drawback is the PTSD. Unfortunately, that is the drawback to my career is, and like you said, it can be debilitating. When I first retired, I mean, all I knew was being a soldier. For 20 years, that's all I knew how to do was be a soldier.
Yeah, we see that a lot. Like, you come home and transitioning to civilian life is not easy for a multitude of reasons. I had friends that came back from the first Gulf War, and the first thing that got them was they're walking around the streets, they're unarmed, right? And it was just, you feel naked, right? They like this idea that you can't defend yourself. You know, they're not suited up like they were for years on end. And you know, the simplest noise. And then there's the other thing. I mean, there's that type of, like, the transitioning to civilian life. But then now you're retired and you've got to do something else, and your family doesn't know how to handle you being home all the time.
You are
right. All of those things.
You hit the nail on the head. When I retired, I was on what they call terminal leave for 3 months. I was still getting a full paycheck from the Army. I started my leave in January. I didn't retire until March 31st. So I couldn't work. I could have, but I didn't want to because I was still drawing a full paycheck from the Army, and I didn't want it to come back and bite me. So I said, you know what? I spent 20 years in the Army. I earned these 3 months. The first month was wonderful. My wife would leave for work. Bye, honey. Have a good day. I'd go back in the house and, oh, okay, what are we going to do today? Now, I have to backtrack a little bit. I retired to Troy because my wife was born and raised in Troy. Born in Keene, raised in Troy. My roots are originally in New Hampshire. My parents met in Keene High. They've long divorced. My mom lives in Florida. My dad lives in California. When I met my wife, I was home visiting my grandmother in Keene, and I met my wife at a Swamp Bats game. If you can believe, a Keene Swamp Bats game. If you can believe it, if I'm lying, I'm dying. And when we decided that I was making the Army, I'd only been in the Army for 4 years when I met my wife, not even 4 years. When I decided I was making the Army a career, my wife said, look, I'll follow you wherever the Army takes us except Texas. She goes, I refuse to go to Texas. She says it's too hot.
You did say you were in Texas
before I met my wife.
Oh, okay.
Before I met my wife, I was in Texas from '97 to '99.
So there's
before I met. I got married in 2001. We'll be married 23 years in October. Nice. My wife said, "Look, I will follow you wherever the Army takes you, but I want to retire in New Hampshire. I want to be close to my family." I said, "You know what? I'm okay with that." So that's why I retired to New Hampshire, but. The transition, the first month, great, lovely one. By month 2, I was losing my mind. Mm-hmm. I didn't handle the transition well. I didn't have the tools. See, here's how the Army, when you transition out of the Army, they teach you all this wonderful stuff of how to do a resume, how to apply for a job. What they don't teach you is the emotional aspects of transitioning from military to civilian life. I didn't handle that well.
What about support? Was there any support here that you could lean on?
Just my wife's family, really.
Right, yeah, that's exactly.
Which, thank God,
your other family.
My wife's family has been. They are my. Now my family is great. They're just far away.
Right.
Yeah. You know, so through phone conversations and what have you.
Sure.
You know, they're wonderful. You know, my dad. We have a little rocky, but it is what it is. That's not why we're here. You know, so month 2, I'm going stir crazy. I'm drinking heavily because I didn't have the emotional tools to know how to be a civilian, if that makes any sense. So I was drinking heavily, and it got to the point where it was starting to affect my marriage. My wife's like, hey, look, you need to, because I was going to therapy before I retired from the Army. My wife's like, you need to get back into therapy. Yeah, and I said, you know what, you're absolutely right. So I got through the VA. I was seeing a therapist for a little bit, and she was okay. She was just reading out of a book, though, and I'm like, man, I can do that. You know, she wasn't listening to me, and she wasn't hearing what I was saying, you know. So I stopped going for a little while, and my PTSD got bad again, and I was like, okay, well, I got to try again. So I went back to the VA, and I linked up with a therapist at the VA, and I've been seeing him for almost 5 years now.
Nice.
And if it wasn't for him, I don't think you and I would be sitting here talking right now.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
if you're out there, you know who you are.
What about you?
I mean, that's one key that you kind of hit on is finding the right therapist, right? So I think a lot of people, they're reluctant to go to therapy in the first place.
There's a stigma.
Exactly. And then once they do go to therapy, if it turns out like that where it's not helping and you're frustrated with it, you don't want to go and find it again. You don't think about like, hey, this is therapy. Yeah, this is horrible. And so the idea of searching for someone else because you're unhappy with therapy just doesn't cross a lot of minds.
Yeah, it took a little bit to get back on the horse and say, okay, look, because like there's a stigma. When I was in the Army, I mean, I've been dealing with this since 2004. I've once again, I've seen and done things that, 2007, horrible deployment. Lost a couple of friends, a horrible deployment. Danger-wise, Afghanistan was by far my worst. And I'll never forget it. When I came home from Afghanistan, my wife, maybe 4 or 5 months later, my wife said, you know what? You came back different from Afghanistan. She goes, you came back different. And I said, I didn't even know what to say. It was like, I guess you're right, I didn't see it, but she did.
Sure. Sure.
So.
Don, where did you serve and how many years were you in? And
So I was in for 7 years. I went OSET infantry training at Fort Benning, Georgia. Got stationed at Fort Stewart, and then I finished up my career at 10th Mountain in New York. I did 2 deployments to Iraq. I joined when I was 18 and got out in 2014.
Wow. Similar type issues, PTSD or?
Yep, very similar. And a lot of, the overall picture is normally the same for veterans, but the inner workings are always different. But yeah, it was the transition, like you said.
Good point, no?
When you get out and you go through, it's like a month or two of like this out processing phase where they teach you about resumes, and they do give you a lot of tools. So it's not necessarily. I think the Army is lacking a little bit. They could do better on preparing these people for the emotional sides of it when they get out.
I mean, you mentioned that, but as you were mentioning it, and you're mentioning it too, what could someone possibly do, like to talk about the emotion? How do you train somebody for an emotional transition? In my mind, I can't see what the Army or the Navy or the military or the government could do. Like what kind of things?
What I think they should do
feel like you could have gotten as help in those.
I think they should, when you're what's called ACAP. Basically, that's where you do all of your out process. You start all your out processing, all that good stuff. I think they need to bring a therapist in, and I think they should separate. Like, okay, who's been in the Army for 20 years? Who's been in the Army for more than 10 years? Who doesn't know anything but being in the military? Put those people in a room with a therapist and say, okay, now we're going to talk about the emotional effects of transitioning out of the military. They don't do that.
So is it?
I suppose you could. Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, I suppose you could do something like that. I mean, you could take, you can be in the service for a shorter period of time, like 4 or 7 years, and having seen combat, and be just as in need of therapy. I suppose that's a good idea, but what about bringing folks who've been through the transition in,
Like me, I would be
reach out to the local
prime example of.
I mean, I would think that would be part of out processing. Hey, where are you gonna retire? Oh, you're gonna be in Troy, New Hampshire. Hey, let us see if there's an American Legion post out there that we can hook you up with, and visit them almost immediately.
The only thing they told me was, here's your closest VA hospital, White River Junction, which is not true. I go to Keene. I go to the outpatient. If I have to go see a specialist or something like that, you got to go up to White River. But I usually go to the Keene, for my therapy and what have you. I go to Keene. So
I know when I was on processing, they were actually supposed to do that. They were supposed to provide a I forget what they called it. It's like a transition team in the state where they would
Triage,
link, right? They would link up with local
Where are you
resources like a
going? Hey,
Legion or
let's-
VFW,
yeah.
and I know not
course,
so
it's
many
a-
new veterans. It's coming through our door. We don't see many newly separated veterans. It's a lot. There's always a gap
Folks that
between
have
it.
gone through
On
that
their own.
process
Yeah.
on their own and
Right.
come to you.
But we still have some that would walk in the door struggling, and we have a lot of resources that we've seen people come in, and a year later we barely see them anymore, and they'll come in every once in a while, and their lives changed completely, and we were able to be instrumental in that, providing resources and updates and checking in on them. It's a lot more than what people think.
And
Yeah.
the thing with PTSD is it affects every veteran differently.
Yeah.
Some veterans handle it better than others. With me, my main thing is crowds. I don't like crowds. I don't like feeling like I'm claustrophobic and boxed in. So, which is Friday is going to be a struggle for
Yeah, I was
me
gonna
at
say, that'll
the
be
show.
interesting.
Friday is going to, I'm going to a very large concert on Friday, and I'm really not looking forward to that aspect. But I'm going with a very good friend that I've known for a very long time, who I've gone to concerts with him before, after retiring from the military, so he knows.
Yep.
And he keeps an eye out for me. And he knows when I'm starting to, he can feel it. Hey, man, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay, man, I'm okay. And he'll help me if I need, to get out of there or whatever. He will absolutely be there for me if I needed him to. So,
No, that's a tough thing. I think maybe one of the problems is that all the out processing is done by the Army and by, what did you call it? The
ACAP. It's called the ACAP program.
that is a
What is it?
government
Army
run.
Career Advancement Program,
Yeah,
something
something
like
like
that.
So that is an Army, military, government-run program. So all they know is government. So when they point you to the local VA, here's your local VA. That's part of their world that they're aware of. Whereas the American Legion, VFW, these are private nonprofits, and so they're not hooked into that. Is there a way to get hooked into it, or is there a rule against getting hooked into it? Like,
Not that I'm aware of any rule, and I think the issue, like any large government organization, would be getting involved in that is the process and who needs to be involved to make that happen. And how is it going to be implemented across all these posts? How many military installations is there? How many thousands of veterans get out of service every month? And how do we actually control that and get them connected with local resources when they get out? It's a very cumbersome
Maybe
thing.
it doesn't have to go that far. Maybe it just starts with, hey, here's a list of American Legions in your state that you're going to retire in, right? Just a one-pager, just a piece of paper at least, right?
So that's been one of the problems we've had in the state too, though, is being able to, we're much better at it now than we were before, being able to have an answer for, a veteran who wants to get health care, or he wants to, find out whether whether the government will cover his wife's hospital payments or whatever. So, but now there are plenty of solutions, like there's the State Veterans Advisory Committee, and that's made up of people from all over the state, different services. Some commanders, some are even higher than that. There was recruiter people in there, and so that's a first stop. That would be a first place for commanders if they don't have another place to aim them at. That might not be a bad place to start, because I think that's one of the biggest problems is knowing what to do. We have the same trouble at Liberty House with homeless veterans. The first thing you have to do is get them a license, because many of them can't drive anymore, right? So you have to work on those things, and they'll get really frustrated if they do it on themselves, and I get frustrated with things too, but if they do it on their own and they keep getting passed down, just kick the can down the street, then I think that's a problem.
And that's one place that the American Legion can step in. So each post has their own service officer.
Yep.
And then above their service officer, you have a district service officer and a state service officer. Luckily, our service officer, she's an amazing woman that puts in a lot of hard work. She's actually on the State Veterans Affairs Committee for the Legion. So a veteran comes in and, they don't get bounced around. She'll be there to be like, you need to call this person. And if they don't want to call them, she can call on their behalf. So they come to our post and they need help. We will do the work. We will hold the hand, as bad as that sounds.
No, you're right,
To
though.
get them to it, because we've all been through it, and we understand how frustrating that process can be.
Yep.
You know, Manchester VA, that's where I go. It's a phenomenal VA, but it's a VA. So sometimes things do take longer than some people would like. So that's why we would, if they came to us, okay, we can give a heads up like, hey, this is probably going to take like 3 months.
Right.
So while you're waiting on this, we can bring you down here, and you can look at this stuff. You know, that's one of the big goals we've been trying to do, is bring as many resources underneath our one building as we possibly can, and build good relationships with other organizations. So when a veteran comes in and needs help, we're able to be like, oh, yeah, we know this person at this place. You pick the phone up and call their direct line.
It's all
we
about
have
networking.
We have that relationship with these
Yep.
organizations.
Yep.
And that way the veteran doesn't feel bounced around, and they can come in. And it doesn't matter if they're a member or not. A veteran's a veteran, and we're going to help them.
Yeah.
We will never turn away a veteran. Never. Whether you're a member or not, we will never turn away a veteran.
Yep.
You know, it took me 6 years to join the Legion after I retired. You know, I moved to Troy, small town, didn't know anybody. I didn't grow up in Troy, never really permanently lived in Troy, didn't know anybody, didn't have any friends, you know, no. The commander for the Troy post, very small post. Troy is a very small post, by the way. We don't even have our own. We meet at the library.
Yep.
Our commander had been the commander for 20 years. And she had been trying to get me to join and you know, every time I'd see her, she'd say, "Hey, you want to?" I'm like, "Yeah, maybe eventually." You know, it got to the point where she stopped asking, but she would give me the look. Every time I saw her, she would, you know, give me the look. So finally, I decided, you know, I was missing that veteran connection. That's what it really boiled down to. Was I was missing the camaraderie and the brotherhood of my fellow veterans.
Yeah.
When I joined, Marcy said, "How do you feel about being the next commander?" And I said, "You know what? I'm all for it." Her and I had a lengthy discussion, and she said, "Look, here's a big reason why I would like you to be the commander. You're young." I was like, well, yeah, depends on what you consider young, but
Do you see the gray hair?
right. I mean, what I'm trying to do, being a young commander, is bring in young members to the
And
Legion.
that's really hard to do.
It's very
It's hard to do for
Yeah.
any organization.
I've managed
the younger
to
folks.
I've managed to recruit 2 guys under the age of 40 in the last 3 months. My thing is with trying to recruit young people, they're the future.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
They're the future of the Legion.
Sure.
You know, we're not going to be around forever. Some of the other members of our post aren't going to be around forever. We need that young. They are the future, basically.
Yep.
So I'm trying really hard. Once again, I'll never refuse a veteran. If you're, you know, 70, 75 years old and you want to join the Legion, absolutely. Here's a membership form. We would love to have you.
Yep.
You know, but my goal is I'm trying to recruit the younger people because they are the future of the Legion.
Yeah.
So talking about that, obviously, well, not everybody who joins the Legion needs these types of services. Is that right? So you join the Legion. What's the typical day in the life of a Legion member, right? What's the time commitment? And obviously you want to help people, so you've got you talked about it briefly, a hierarchy of folks. You've got the secretary and service officers and things like that. So what does the Legion do on a regular basis, and what are your young members being groomed or trained to do to take over your position later?
Well,
what kind of things are they getting involved in? Community, et cetera?
Right, that's a great question. We're a very small post, like I said. I'm trying to get us out, get our face out into the community. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me in Troy and said, "I didn't even know we had a Legion." Here we are.
I think a lot of people associate the American Legion with an actual post, a building that has the logo on it. And you just said that you meet in the library, so you don't have a
Troy
permanent.
used to.
You don't have a permanent
Years ago,
location.
Troy used to have a Legion. The Legion in Troy basically was pretty much non-existent for many, many years. They were struggling to get people to come to meetings. We meet once a month. We discuss the minutes from the last meeting, and then we go over new business. We do things in the community. We were supposed to do a couple of weeks ago what's called a Field of Honor. Basically, you can donate to the Legion and place a flag for any veteran that you wish to honor. and we do it. Usually, there's a craft fair and whatever on the common, and we do it.
Yeah.
We're doing that in October in Troy.
Oh, nice.
They do a depot to depot thing from Fitzwilliam to Troy. Us and we work very closely with the Fitzwilliam Post. They are, without the Fitzwilliam Post, I don't know if we would be functioning right now. So we do a lot of collaboration with the Fitzwilliam Post. Love those guys to death. Very thankful that they've taken us and let us, be a part and work together like we do. We do a lot of things together in the community. We go to there's a nursing home in Keene. We go and do sing-alongs, and we built raised garden beds for them, for the residents to do gardening, all kinds of stuff. We try to get our face out into that. Matter of fact, I had one member, the guy I just recruited, pulled me over yesterday. I was driving home. He said, hey, and he pulled me over. He goes, hey, the Cheshire Fair's going on this weekend, right? I said, yeah, and he goes, you thought about putting up a tent out there and trying to recruit? I said, you know what? I never thought about that. I said, but that is a wonderful idea. I said, I'm sure there's a lot of, I'd have to go through the Chamber of Commerce or whatever, whoever I need to go. I said, but that's a great idea for next year. I said, so that gives us a whole year to see who I need to contact and who do I need to reach out to set up a tent at the Cheshire County Fair.
Yeah.
So, and that's the kind of input I love as a commander. When our members come up to me and say, hey, I got a great idea. Really? Let me write this down.
Right.
So I'm not that kind of commander where what I say goes. Absolutely not.
So Don, I know a little bit about the Hillsborough American Legion.
Yeah, so our Legion is definitely a different beast because we have brick and mortar, we have a canteen.
And how many members, roughly?
Between all the families, so the riders are considered a family, but you have to be a member of the Legion. So between the Legionnaires, which are all veterans, the auxiliary, which is daughters and spouses of veterans, and then the Sons of the American Legion, which are male descendants of veterans, we have roughly 700 to 800 members at our post.
And what are you doing in the community? Tell the viewers what you're doing, because you turn that, I won't get into it because we don't need to, but you turn that American Legion around. You got more people involved now, and
so we've done a lot of things this year. I mean, I'd still like to see us doing more, but it's starting progress.
Now, have you been there for a year?
I got elected in January. I got elected as second vice commander last year in May, and then commander this year in January.
So I didn't mean to stop you, but talk more about community.
Yeah, so we donate to $1,400 check, I think it was, something around there, to the New Hampshire Veterans Home. We donated a total of $4,500 direct to mortgage companies for veterans that were falling behind. We did a $2,300 check to a veteran that was about to have their electricity cut off. We donated $430 to Officer Normand of the Hillsborough Police Department so she could participate in the Heroes Cup, which is a fundraiser for Special Olympics. The way we raise these funds is we had 603 line dance come up twice for that. We've had a chili cook-off.
Where was I for the chili cook-off? Right? Right?
Just a bunch of fundraisers. Our time commitment is a lot different, so we have an executive board meeting the first Tuesday of every month, and then we have an executive board meeting followed by a general Legionnaires meeting the third Tuesday of every month. Our general meetings tend to run about an hour to two, and then our executive board meetings are roughly about an hour. So, just in meeting time a month, we're talking about 5 hours of commitment. We participated in the Hillsborough Parade this year as well. We got second place actually for our float, so that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
We had auxiliary, us, and the Legion Riders were all together on one
Talk
float.
about the Legion Riders, because I'm not sure people know what that is.
Okay, so the Legion Riders are comprised of all members of the American Legion, and you do not have to belong. Well, depending, because it's a program of the post, so kind of like the baseball program, where it operates directly underneath that post, and that post commander has overall authority over them. And they ride motorcycles and raise funds. One of the biggest things that the Legion Riders work for, which is a national fund, which is the Legacy Run. It's for scholarships for veterans' children that are either wounded or deceased. And last year, if I remember correctly, the Legion Riders raised $2.8 million for that fund. One good thing, some people don't like Legion Riders because they feel it's like too much motorcycle, they wear leather and this and that. You're never going to please everybody, but one thing that I see for a benefit of it is it's really helped bring in younger membership. We've seen a lot of younger members because it gives them an activity to do.
There's social things to get involved with.
Yeah, there's social aspect. But
like Don was saying, the more social stuff you do in the community, the more people are going to want to join.
Yeah.
They're going to say, wow, they're out there doing all this good stuff. Like we do a poppy drive,
Right.
usually around Memorial Day. We did it a couple weeks before this year. We raised $800 in 4 hours in Troy. We doubled last year's poppy fund. So,
no, I would imagine that a motorcycle group it raises visibility too, right? If they go on a run, even if it's post to post, right, across the state, there's the visibility, and motorcycle charity runs tend to bring in a lot of money, right? Because you get a fee for each of the drivers, each of the riders or passengers, and then whatever other donations that take place on that, because everybody who rides a motorcycle wants to get in on that.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I may be a little biased because I ride a motorcycle and I'm part of them as well. But it also builds camaraderie, especially in this state, amongst other posts. So we have a game. You steal plaques. So each post that wants to participate, you get to build your own plaque. There's certain dimensions that has to fall inside, and there's rules to it. You can't prevent somebody from taking it. But what it does is it encourages a group of at least 5 members to go to another post to take their plaque or to get our plaque back, whatever it may
very
be.
cool.
don't worry about coming to Troy.
And it just makes that camaraderie and fun around it, and it definitely it helps bring unity, and you get to meet other members at other posts. So like when you go to your state convention, it's like, oh, I met you before on this, so you gives you a little bit more exposure and a little bit more fun, and it kind of opens the eyes up to the newer membership what other posts are like and how other people are in other areas. Because we have our district, state, and national bylaws that we have to abide by. We don't have a choice. However, the running of every individual post is really left up to the commander and the executive board, and then we're the agents to execute what our general membership wants. So we have a lot of flexibility in what we're able to do because those bylaws aren't so constricting, and they're designed like
Don
that.
has a lot more on his plate than I do. Being a much bigger post, he has a canteen. That's a whole different animal.
Tell us about the canteen. What?
It's a bar.
So
basically.
it's a bar. So it's the social aspect that I was talking.
Right. But it brings in a lot of money for that post.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that's one thing too that the Legion has a stigma about, which there's always stigmas at everything, is that it's just a place to go drink. Well, this is a perfect example. They don't have the canteen.
We don't have one in Ware either.
That's
Exactly.
exactly what we think of when we think of VFW.
Yeah.
I mean, same
And
thing.
it's not
right?
true at all. So the canteen is a completely separate entity from the American Legion. It is not recognized by district, state, nothing. We are able to operate it as a fundraiser for the Legionnaires. That's all it is.
I see.
So you
it's
do
a fun-
Sunday breakfast now, or
We have
So
not
does that-
started that up again.
So does that mean you need a liquor license?
Yes,
or-
yeah, we're licensed just like any regular
so
restaurant.
You're regular state. Okay, so there's nothing.
Yep.
now you can't go in as a non-member unless you go in as a guest.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. You have to be signed in
Yep.
by a card-holding guest or a member rather.
Yep.
And it's all the regular state laws apply to us. The only things that we have some exceptions for is like we're able to put gambling machines in there because it's charitable gambling state.
Right.
And then
Have you done that?
Yep. We have 7 video machines and 7 slots for pull tabs, Keno, and
Wow.
scratch tickets.
Nice.
Which is
I haven't
something-
been in there in a while. They used to have guys cooking, like wings and
Tonight, right now,
fish.
Wing Wednesday, right now. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
And
missing
Whitney and
that
Biggie.
too.
And being that I'm the commander of a small post, I go to these posts, such as Hillsborough, Jaffrey, Keene, and I walk in and go, wow, like Jaffrey is a beautiful, I love Jaffrey's post. They have they have this whole outdoor backyard area where they have live bands. It is an awesome post. But I think, wow, that's a lot of work too.
Because he said he's only doing, it's about 5 hours a week.
Well,
rather.
so that's
not
just
for
meetings. Yeah, that's just meetings.
That's meetings for the regular rank and file.
Exactly.
I'm
Then
sure
you gotta-
that
yeah,
Don
then-
has quite a bit more.
And then you got payroll checks you have to do, donation checks.
Yep.
Luckily, I have a full executive board now, so like all the financial stuff is looked after by the finance officer, and then the reports are just given to me, and I verify everything's being done correctly now.
Who's the adjutant?
The adjutant is Ernie.
Ernie.
Yeah, Ernie Giavelli.
Yep.
Yeah, he's done a lot for our post as well. I'm very grateful for Ernie.
Yep.
I have a great team, and it makes it easier. You know, like we're working on. We have a golf tournament coming up. It's going to be our second golf tournament, and you can go on Facebook and find it. They raised $10,000 last year.
Nice.
The golf tournament one day. I mean, obviously you got to pay some sponsors and this and that. There's deals all behind it. But
Sure.
Toby, who heads that up, he does a phenomenal job, and he's got a great group of people behind him supporting him. And so my hands are totally off on that. I'm not going to mess something up that's working. And they killed it last year. They've already broken the $5,000 mark this year in fundraising for that.
So they're playing golf locally?
At Angus Lee.
Angus Lee, yeah.
Yep.
So the veterans own that restaurant, too.
Correct. Yep, and we'll be hosting it there again. There's an event page that you can go on, and that links them to the website. So if people want to sign up, they can sign up. Sponsorships available to be done through there as well. That's one of our bigger undertakings. And another big undertaking I talked to you a little bit about is we've teamed up with Harbor Care. We got the packets on at our post now, and we got a goal to raise $44,000 by October 8th.
Wow.
To donate to Harbor Care to gap fill the $1,000 need for all the veterans inside of Hillsborough County that are homeless, but that means they're either in their care.
Yep.
And it's to help make it so that they have enough funds so they can get all the homeless veterans in housing. So that's another big push that we're doing. Those are our two big ones this year.
Yeah, it's hard to have more than two, actually. I mean, because you're going to the same people for the money, pretty much.
Correct.
Right?
Yep. And some of the stuff, like when we raise funds for other things, we hold fundraisers like the line dancing. It's open to the public. So whoever wants to come, we have people come from Manchester, come out, go line dancing. $20 at the door, have fun.
Yeah.
And that's how we make a decent amount of our funds. We don't necessarily always solicit for direct cash from companies or people. We do, but that's for the bigger events. You have certain target audiences depending on your fundraiser, of course. So that's golf tournament. The golf tournament hits a lot of businesses because obviously that's a high vis thing. They want to hit certain businesses like that.
Is that on a weekend or is it like Thursday?
It's going to be a Saturday.
Saturday.
Yep. Yep. And they, like I said, they did great last year, and that was the first one they did. They had 4 months, I think it was 3 or 4 months to plan from scratch, plan a golf tournament last year, and they raised $10,000.
Nice.
Yeah, now if they really buckle up.
Well, like Dawn said, it depends on the team that you have around you as well. My adjutant, who used to be the commander, she is now my adjutant, Marcy Conant. That's my right-hand woman. Yeah. I don't know what I would do without Marcy. She handles all the financial stuff, all the ordering, whatever, Hey, Marcy, can we do this? Yeah, we can do that. Great, let's do it. So without her, I'd be lost.
Yeah, it's a good support system around you guys.
Yeah.
So with the Troy Post, you talk about how small it is. Are you expanding? And
we're trying. What's
your vision for expansion?
God. Obviously, the end goal would be to have our own building. To have, I'm not even really concerned with a canteen. I would just like to have a place that's designated. Yes, this is where we meet at the library, and they're great. I love the people at the library. They're always so helpful, and they have no problem letting us meet there. But my end goal is to have us. The mill is. I think they're turning it into apartments. The old mill in Troy. I don't know if you remember the owner or the guy that bought the mill had said at one point that, hey, because there's some commercial space in there too. He said, hey, we'd love to try to get you guys a place in the mill to be able to meet. I want something that says on the front American Legion. Yep. So people know, yes, that's where the American Legion meets. I mean, there was talk because Troy is so small of us shutting down and just combining with Fitzwilliam. Because we are so small, and I was like, I'm going to fight that till the end. I want Troy. I love Fitzwilliam. I have no problem joining that, but I want Troy to succeed. Yeah. I want the Troy Post to be, when people go, oh wow, Troy's really turning things around over there. Yeah. That's my goal I'm trying to really turn that. I'm trying to bring us out of obscurity into the light. So, and hopefully with bringing in new young members and doing all the things we do in the community. I mean, I've been putting our face out there so much in the last. I helped me and the police chief of Troy coordinated the entire Memorial Day parade for Troy, just me and him. And it was by far one of the best parades I've ever been a part of. It was a lot of work, a lot of meetings, but it was so worth it to see. But that's when people say, wow, the American Legion did that? That's the kind of stuff where I want people to go, wow, they're really doing a lot of good stuff.
You probably had the same thing in Hillsborough. Because I don't believe the Legion's done much of anything for the parade.
Oh, for the parade,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a while. We
Yeah.
were going to last year, but it got rained out.
Yeah.
And then, so
Yeah.
the parade never even ended up happening last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it was nice to participate in it this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with both of you. You know, you've got to get your name out there. You got to let people know what you're doing. You got to be positive about it. But more importantly, you have to help your brothers and sisters find solutions to their problems.
Absolutely.
And if you can do it through somebody they trust, you know, it's a win-win.
Yeah. And transparency is huge. Like, we're actually working on, we voted to establish our own website for our post. So here in the next coming months, we'll have an operational website. Currently, all we have is Facebook, but you know,
Yes.
I try to be very good at anytime we do things or what's happening. I try to make very detailed posts about what's going on, and that's open to the public to see. So that's not just our members that are seeing it, but that way,
Right.
everybody inside of our community, the communities that we serve, because we serve multiple communities, obviously,
Yep.
they can see that. Oh yeah, they made a donation, or they came and did this, or they came for pool night. Like, your money's not going to waste. It's being handled properly with respect, and it's going to things that are actually improving veterans' lives or family members of veterans' lives.
So having your own building and you know, all the administrative, there's got to be a cost to that. So I know just with the Pistol Club, right? I'm on the board of directors over there. You know, we have these annual fundraisers, and we're kind of just squeezing by owning our own building. So do you have those types of troubles, or are you strong financially?
So summertime is always a little bit nerve-wracking because it contracts and people don't want to go hang out at a bar all day.
Right.
So, but overall, the financial health of our post is we are not just scraping by, we're succeeding.
Yeah, because I mean, you
We
do
have
have.
enough
I
revenue
mean, some
generated.
of the funds have to go towards just the administrative cost of
Yep.
taking care of.
In our
it.
building, we can fit like 100 people inside of our canteen and 285 in our hall.
And they rent the hall out.
Yeah, like just me. I spent 26 hours painting the hall this weekend. I mean, we had a bunch of volunteers. Like Aaron was there, Kelly was there, Taylor was there, like all weekend too. Like we had a bunch of people volunteer, but it's such a big hall, huge undertaking. Jill, the past commander, was there. John was there, and it
Yeah.
still took us all weekend. You know, which is part of it. You know.
Yeah. Keeping building maintenance is, you know, yeah.
And so there is a significant operation cost when you have a building that big.
So the idea there is, I mean, you've got your members, you've got the, what you say, 5.5 hours a month of membership meetings and whatnot, but volunteer too, right? Volunteer both for each other and for the post.
Yep. Yeah, and that's extremely hard to keep track of. Unfortunately, it's some months I spend a very long time, a lot of time at the post. Some months or less. It's kind of a month by month thing, depending on what's happening that month. You know, we have multiple committees that are up and standing inside of our post too, so they provide oversight to the execution of what the membership wants. So sometimes I have to meet with the committee heads. So
It's like running a big business.
exactly. It's exactly what it is. So my goal is this year is for the total building to bring in $2 million. So it's basically like running a $2 million corporation because you
Sure,
have
yeah.
other officers that have votes, and me as a commander, I don't have a vote. So I just execute. So it'd be like being a CEO.
You let people know it's a 280-person hall and it is rentable, right?
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
it is.
So
It is.
if
And it's
you're
freshly
looking for an
painted.
event
And
location,
it's freshly painted, right,
that is
exactly.
freshly renovated, give the American Legion a call. You know, you get yourself a relatively inexpensive hall, and you're contributing to a good cause.
Yeah, and the hall has a full bar, has a full licensed kitchen in it as well. So they can rent the kitchen too. If people want to rent to do the fall underneath our licensing for like people that do farmers markets and stuff, sometimes they need to use a licensed kitchen. We're able to provide that service for them as
Right.
well.
Nice.
The best way to get a hold of us is either Facebook, calling us, which is the American Legion in Hillsborough, Young and Richardson Post 59, or my direct email would be amlegion post 59 commander @gmail.com, and I check that daily. So
Yeah, it sounds like the state emails.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
But that'll get
LGUS.
directly to me. We have another email, but that goes to our bookkeeper as well. So that gets a little, like, with all the bills and stuff coming in, it kind of gets hard for her to forward. certain
So how
things.
many employees do you have then? Because they're not all volunteers, correct? Or are they?
No, we have employees. We have
Bartenders?
11 bartenders, a post manager, a bookkeeper, and 3 cleaning staff,
There you go.
all on payroll.
But not full time.
No, we only have one that is on salary.
I know restaurants that don't have 11 full-time
I know, I was thinking that's a lot.
The hard part with the
Some you wish had 11.
my thought with increasing the amount of bartenders we had on staff was just because functions come up randomly and it makes it a little bit more flexibility.
So
to fill
that
in.
there's enough that somebody will be available and willing to go and make a couple of bucks.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, I don't know, JP.
Well, and the same goes with me. If you're looking if you're in the Troy area and you want to join, Facebook, American Legion Post 56. You can find me, Dylan, D-Y-L-A-N, like Bob Dylan. Gray, G-R-A-Y, not E-Y. You can find me on Facebook. My picture, my profile picture is me and Ozzy Osbourne. So you can't miss it. So if you're interested in joining, yes, I got to meet him in 2019. So if you're interested in joining in the Troy area or whatever, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm not going to give out my phone number on the air. So
Not a good idea. Not a good idea. I don't have any other questions. I mean, I really appreciate you guys coming, and we could have spent a lot of time on security for veterans. We're still
been here
seeing
for 3 hours.
Yeah, we're
talking
still
about the stuff
seeing 22 veterans committing suicide a day. We could talk about those things maybe another time. Trying to figure out how you guys can get help there.
The last thing I do want to touch on, like you just said, JP, is do not suffer in silence. Talk to somebody. If you are hurting and you are suffering, call somebody. Call me, call Dawn, call somebody. Call the VA, call the suicide crisis line. There are so many resources out there. Use them, please. We don't want you to be a statistic.
Right.
Please call somebody.
Yeah, that's one thing that JP and we've done a lot of shows centered around services for veterans, and I don't want to say there's an abundance of it, but there's a lot of services out there, and we highlight them as much as we can. And to some extent, it surprises me how many services are available, but there's just no visibility, and or some people just have this aversion to seeking out those services. But there's so many resources.
It's ridiculous how many, and it mystifies me that some people still won't use them. I had a former commander of mine commit suicide about 2 years ago. I talked to him 6 months before he died for 2 hours on the phone, saying, "Hey, sir, I could tell something was wrong. I could see it in his Facebook post." So I called him and I said, "Hey, sir, what's going on?" And we talked for like 2 hours. 6 months later, he killed himself. And a part of me was like, did I do enough?
Yeah.
But how much more could I have done? Really?
Yeah. Well, once you can reach out, you can offer to be there.
But they have to want it.
Exactly. And that's really the part we don't really need to get into any of that. So
Also,
anyway,
another good resource for veterans too is Ruck Up on a Keen.
There you go.
They have a lot.
Is AJ still there?
AJ is still
Good.
there. Yes.
And what's it
Good.
called?
Ruck Up. Yep.
RUCKUP. Ruck
Yep.
Up.
Yep, got it.
And they're a very great organization, especially when it comes to talking veteran suicide. That's one of their driving goals for that organization. They offer a lot of other things, but their motto is we work for the survivors, or the survivors are the mission.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So they got a lot of people that have been
Nice,
down those
that's great.
paths. And
The guy that runs it, AJ, phenomenal
Great man.
Phenomenal man.
all right. Well, thank you, Don. Thank you, Dylan. This has been a great show.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, JP.
thank you guys.
Again, we like to do these types of shows. So anytime you want to come back, if there's a subject you want to talk about,
Let us know.
Just let us
Love
know.
to.
We're always looking for guests.
Love to. I had a great
and we
time.
can always do a show like this. We can always do a show for the veterans.
One last thing before we leave. Go Army, beat Navy.
I don't know. We're two.
There's two of us here.
Throw it in there.
All right. We'll see you next week, folks.